Christine, good morning. That's right. We're joined by Casey Arbenz, the defense attorney for Officer Collins. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
You bet.
I'm going to get straight to yesterday, that
Sure.
moment when those not guilty verdicts came down. Of course, Officer Burbanks was first.
Right.
What were your thoughts? What were your feelings? What were your emotions at that time?
Well, I can tell you that we were all very, nervous and kind of shaky hand and clammy feeling, with the exception of my client, Officer Collins, who was just steady from the beginning. He was a 8-year Army Ranger, did a lot of deployments, 5-year cop with a perfect record, and he was the guy that everybody on the Tacoma Police Department trusted to do the tough stuff. And he was calm, cool, and collected, and like I say, the rest of us were pretty nervous.
Right, but of course, that may be a sigh of relief when that verdict, not guilty verdict came
Yeah,
down.
I mean, it was, when you heard Officer Burbanks' verdict, you kind of sensed that it was probably going to be the same for Officer Collins because they're partners. So yeah, I was just under the table, just kind of, you want to be respectful, of course. The loss of life is tragic, but from our perspective, this was a case where the state was prosecuting our guys wrongfully. And man, yeah, it felt good for them to be acquitted, because we just fundamentally believed that they were put in an impossible position and they did their jobs. And to have to be charged with a crime for that is tragic.
Well, let's talk about that night. Everyone has seen that video, right? It's been out there. And in that video, we can see Manuel-Ellis being restrained.
Yep.
And still, even despite, and the jury saw that video, and they still found all 3 officers not guilty. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, there was only 10 or 15 seconds of total video of an encounter that was about 4 minutes long. And, there was a witness named Ayanna Malang who lived across the street, who talked about as she was laying in bed, and the commotion that she heard and the time period between what she heard and then ultimately the Sarah McDowell yell of, "Hey, leave him alone." And she described about 2 minutes, and she was an extremely credible witness. And we talked to the jurors after, and they all said, the state kind of shied away from her testimony, but that she was the most credible of all the civilian witnesses. And so that time period suggested that this struggle had been going on for about 2 minutes before Sarah McDowell started videotaping. And so the jury only could see a very small portion of the entire incident, but what officers described in their sworn statements was totally consistent with what was on the video, minus the first 2 minutes where they described how Ellis had, provoked the confrontation, how they were just trying to restrain him. You heard the officers say things like, "Put your hands behind your back, put your hands behind your back." And, the way they've been portrayed has been really just an injustice, because they were in an impossible position. Mr. Ellis unfortunately took this massive dose of methamphetamine, and they were just trying to get him under control, because they cannot call paramedics until the scene is secure. And paramedics won't come. They won't help somebody. They won't administer aid if someone is not restrained. And so they were just trying to get him in cuffs, and unfortunately he just kept fighting.
Well, of course, there's also 2 sides to this, right, as we've been talking about. And last night, hundreds of people gathered to march, to protest. They're feeling ignored. They feel like justice wasn't served. What's your message to the Ellis family supporters?
Well, I mean, again, and I feel that the defense has been very respectful of the fact that Mr. Ellis died. And, anytime anybody dies, that is a tragedy. And it was the last thing my client, Officer Collins, or any of the officers wanted. So to them, obviously we feel for their loss, but that loss, it would only be worse if innocent people were convicted of a crime, because that wasn't what happened here. And again, it's tempting to look at a 10 or 15 second video clip and decide that exactly what happened. But the jurors heard the whole story. They saw the physical evidence. They listened to all the witnesses, like Ms. Malang. And they said, no, this wasn't a crime. These guys are innocent. And so when they heard the full story, it was a very different picture. So, obviously I understand emotions are high, and it's a tragedy. And Mr. Ellis had many positive traits, but he also suffered from addiction. And I think, unfortunately, that's what led him to this situation.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Absolutely.
We'll let you get back to your day.